Today's daf, we're going to be learning a Sanhedrin daf Ayin Chet. This week's learning is sponsored by Am Rubin. I would like to thank two people who've had the greatest influence on my Jewish life and learning in the most recent years. Michelle Farber, who has become my study partner through her podcast since I started Daf Yomi in January 2020. I've not missed a day of reading or listening. And to Rabbi Elliot Kosgrove, who inspired me in more ways than I could say in reconnecting with my Jewish soul. Today's daf is sponsored by Judith Weil in memory of Rabbi Eliyahu Chaim Greenberg Zichrono Livracha on his 50th year at site this past Monday. My grandfather was an Eloi who grew up in difficult circumstances. He didn't know how to tell you he loved you in words, so he'd tell you by sitting you down to learn a daf of Gemara together. Yehi Zichro Baruch. Today's daf is sponsored by Rona Fink in loving memory of her brother-in-law, Michael Desroches, who passed away February 26th. Michael was a self-described Christian Zionist devoted to Israel and the future of the Jewish people. Yizichro Baruch. Okay, we're going to get started now with the top of our daf Tanu Rabbanan. We're starting from the top at the Breita. Second line. Hikuhu asara b'nei adam b'asara maklov b'meit. A very famous case. We have 10 people, like a gang. They beat up on this person and they kill him. Bein bevat achat, bein b'zerach hazeh p'turin. According to Tanakama, whether they do it all at once or they do it one after the other, everybody's exempt because 10 people cause the death of one person, and generally we need to have one person for one. Nefesh tachat nefesh. So if they all kill together, then no. But Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera Omer, he says, that would be bevat achat. If they do it all together, you're right. 10 are all responsible. We can't do that. But if they do it one after the other, the last one is liable because the last one, that last one actually made the death closer, meaning, okay, let's try that. I'm doing a literal translation. But basically, that made the death happen quicker, okay? Because maybe the person would have died 5 minutes later, but when they gave that last blow and the person's soul left their body, that was the moment of death. So that person can be late. We can put the blame on that person. So in the case where they all beat up at the same time, we can't make one person responsible. Nobody's going to get the death penalty. But if it was one after the other, we have a machloket, Tanakama, and Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera. So comes Rabbi Yochanan, explains us machloket. And on what basis do they say this? Am Rabbi Yochanan, u'shnei mikra achad darshu. They both darshan this from one pasuk. Ish ki yakeh kol nefesh adam. Now the word all, okay, kol nefesh adam, could mean all or part of, like, it really could mean any, okay? Think about uses of the word all. Like, don't eat all the food, right? Or you can eat all the food. Okay, don't eat all the food means don't eat everything, right? Your sister's coming home for dinner later, so don't eat all the food. So don't eat, don't eat all of it. Don't eat, right? Or what did I say before? Just lost my train of thought. But you can eat all of the food. That means you can eat any of it. You can eat this, you can eat that, you can eat that. So that's going to be their way of describing this pasuk, the machloket. Ish ki yakeh kol nefesh adam. Rabbanan savre kol nefesh, so it's a person who hits the soul, right? The entire soul of a person, or all of the soul of a person, right? Entire would make it clear. This is all of the soul of a person. Rabbi Yehuda ben Rabbanan savre kol nefesh ad ika kol nefesh. It has to be the complete soul. Now, you didn't take the complete soul out because the guys before you already took out part of the soul. By the time you got to the person, they were almost dead. Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera savar kol nefesh kol du nefesh. You take out any part of his soul, you're liable. Amar Rav. Hakol modim b'horeget treifa. So now Rav is going to come and define or qualify the machloket. Hakol modim b'horeget treifa shu patur. Everybody agrees that if you kill a treifa is, okay, usually we use it in terms of animals. We always say treif. Treif doesn't mean what we think it means. Treif is non-kosher meat, but really non-kosher meat is usually a nevela. It means it wasn't shechted properly. We're going to learn all this in Chulin. A treifa is an animal that would have died, that has some sort of, and some of the food that we call treif has this issue, which is if the animal had some sort of something wrong with it, that it would have died within 12 months, then we call it a treifa, and you're not allowed to shech that kind of an animal. Even if you do a kosher shechita, it's not going to be kosher. Here we're talking about people. If you kill someone who anyway would have died within the next 12 months, then like he has some sort of defect that would cause the death, some broken limb that's going to be a serious injury that's going to cause the person to die. Shu patur. For sure, if you kill a person like that halachically is considered a dead person. Okay, they're not really considered alive. So if you kill, they're not a nefesh. because a nefesh is someone alive. Now, even though they are alive and breathing, they're not really alive because they're going to die soon. So, but now we're going to categorize who's in that category. So they put a treifa in that category. And notice Rava says hakol modin. Everyone agrees, meaning the machloket's not going to be in this case. It's not going to be in another case. It's just in this case of the gang. And we'll get back to that. So everyone agrees if you kill a treifa, you're exempt. If there's somebody who's sick and you think they're going to die from that disease, they don't have like simanim, like noticeable, particular something that makes it clear that they're a treifa, but they're sick in bed and we assume they're going to die. If you kill that person, you're liable. Why are you liable? Because this is all, and the focus being on bidei shamayim, it's in the hands of God. We don't know, is the person going to die or not? When it's treifa, it's very clear. There's clear definitions of what constitutes treifa. When it's not, just disease, we don't know. Person might get better, just like they got sick. In the hands of God, they might get better by the hands of God. So for sure, you're going to be liable in that case. Lo nechleku ela b'goses bidei adam. The machloket is specifically our case, where you're about to die because of what people did to you, because you got beaten up. Mar medamele the treifa, umar medamele the goses bidei shamayim. So one says it's like a treifa, because you're clearly going to die. And the other says, what do you mean? It's like a goses bidei shamayim. That, you might, who knows? Maybe you'll die, maybe you won't. You don't have any outward signs of treifa signs or clear signs of treifa. So now the question is, okay, and that's their machloket. And therefore, the one who says it's like a treifa is going to say you're exempt. That's Rabbi Yehuda no, I just forgot. Right, that's Chachamim who say you're exempt. Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera is going to say you're obligated because you've used it like a goses bidei shamayim. So manda medamele the treifa my time alone medamele the goses bidei shamayim. Now we're going to have to go through each one. Why didn't he hold like the other person? So goses bidei shamayim lo et avibe maaseh, because a goses bidei shamayim, nothing actually happened to it, right? No action happened to it, right? Like treifa, usually something happened, something broke, something missed, right? But hayit avibe maaseh, this is more similar, right? Goses bidei shamayim, you just got a disease, not like something particular happened to you, like a fall or a hitting or something like that. Here, people beat this person up. So the one who says it's like a goses bidei shamayim, why didn't he compare it to a treifa? Because treifa mechatche simanim, hala mechatche simanim. A treifa has clear signs that are severed, a limb that's broken, something like that, which we know is going to cause its death. Here we don't have any clear signs like that, and therefore, so one is, there was an action that happened to it, which would be the same for a treifa and for the gang issue here. And the other says no, it doesn't have any clear signs this person's definitely going to die, and therefore the person who actually did the last blow, they're liable. And it's going to be more like goses bidei shamayim that we're going to make you liable. Tana kamed Rav Sheshet. Now we're going to bring a breita in front of Rav Sheshet, but then we're going to have a problem with this breita. So a student brought the breita, and the breita reads like this. Again, quoting our pasuk: Ish kiakeh kol nefesh adam, a person who hits this, right, hits and kills a person, his whole soul. Lahavi hamaket chavero ve'ein bo kedei la'amit. This includes someone who hits a friend, and it's not enough to kill the person. Uba achil v'himito. So if I beat someone up, but I didn't beat them up enough that they would die from it, comes someone else and beats them up, okay, ba achil v'himito, and kills them, shu chayav. That person is chayav, and stomach Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera. Now this would be just like, I'm sorry, I didn't read this right. I skipped a line. Uba achil v'himito shu chayav. Okay, sorry. And now the Gemara asks and says, wait a minute. Pshita. Okay, this is a silly breita. There's no reason for the breita to tell us this. If I hit someone, just a regular hit, and I couldn't have killed him from it, and then you came along and dealt the second blow and killed the person, of course you're liable. I don't need a breita to tell me that. That's just common sense. I didn't do anything wrong, right? I mean, I did something wrong. I beat someone up, but I didn't beat them up enough that they would die, and therefore, obviously, you're liable. So therefore, they change what the breita says. And the breita must read, instead of ein bo kedei lahamit, they switch it to yesh bo kedei lahamit. Ela yesh bo kedei lahamit, uba acher v'mito shu chayav. What it's telling you is, if yesh bo kedei lahamit, if I could have killed the person, but they didn't yet die, and then you came and killed them, you'd be liable, because stama to Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera. This seems to go exactly like Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera. And now at least the Mishnah is teaching you something unique, and it's only according to this unique opinion, not like the rabbis. who disagreed. I'm a Rava. Now we're going to see some laws of Rava. We saw a whole bunch of laws of Rava yesterday. We're going to see more laws of Rava today. Had a lot to say about these topics. Hahoreg et treifa patur. If you kill a treifa, you're exempt. This we saw before, right? Someone who kills someone who is anyway going to die is exempt. But now we're going to go even farther. Treifa shaharag. What if the person who killed the murderer is a treifa? Was anyway going to die? So did they get the death penalty? No. Why wouldn't they? Well, we're going to see. It depends. And it's not going to be clear yet why it depends on this, so hold off on figuring it out. Bifnei beitin chayav, shelo bifnei beitin patur. If the treifa killed in front of the court, maybe not the smartest thing, certainly not in this case, the person will be executed. But shelo bifnei beitin, but if it wasn't before judges, and then it would have to be witnesses, then they're exempt. We don't know why. Right now we're going to explain. Bifnei beitin chayav, why? Dechtiv ubiarta hara mikirbecha. The court is commanded to uproot evil. So who cares if the person who murdered is a treifa or not a treifa? They killed a person. Of course, we're going to make them liable. The context of this is a navi, a false prophet who tries to sway the people. And anyway, that's a whole different topic. But the point is there that it's up to the court to uproot evil. So if the court sees this kind of thing, they have to uproot evil. Okay, that's not a chiddush. The chiddush is going to be in the next line. Shelo b'fnei beitin patul. Dahavi la'edut she'i ata yachol lahazima. This is going to be, maybe I'll read one more line. B'chol edut she'i ata yachol lahazima lo shma edut. Let's start from the last line. In order for testimony to be valid testimony, it has to be testimony that can potentially be knocked out by other witnesses in an edim zomimim type of way, meaning which we'll explain right now. So that means if I come and testify, it has to be a case where theoretically witnesses could come and say, like for example, I have to say what time and what place, because could be two other witnesses will come and say, listen, Michelle, you couldn't testify about that at that day, at that time, because you were with us somewhere else at that day and that time. And then what would happen to me? Here's the key. I would get the punishment that I tried to do to that person. Let's go through our case now. So in order for testimony to be valid as testimony, it has to be testimony that can be knocked out by two other witnesses. And the punishment that the person would get, the witnesses, the false witnesses, would get the punishment they tried to do to the person they were lying about. Now, if they come and testify about a treifa that killed, what are they trying to do? They're trying to get this treifa, this person who was going to die anyway, they want to get him killed now instead of in the next 12 months, right? Within the next 12 months. They were trying to kill someone who was a dead person anyway. So we can't, if they became edim zomimim, we wouldn't be able to implement the punishment because the punishment was they tried to kill someone who was anyway going to die. And then we were to kill them and they weren't anyway going to die. So there's no way to give implementation of that punishment. And therefore, we can't actually execute this person based on witnesses' testimony. It's a radical idea. Okay, so let's read it again inside. If it's not bifnei beitin, they're exempt because you would need witnesses. Now, the whole beauty of the court is that they don't need witnesses. They themselves just issue the judgment. So, but once you need witnesses, it has to be edut she'i ata yachola. This is edut she'i ata yachola zima. You can't turn them into edim zomimim because they can't get the punishment they tried to do to the other. So any edut she'i ata yachola zima lo shma edut. Because in the end, again, what did these witnesses do? It's not just kashir zamam. It's that they were trying to kill someone who was a dead person anyway. So we're not going to kill them that's not murder, right? Normally, edim zomimim are actually murderers because they tried to kill someone who was a live person, but this person was a dead person, so they're not going to become edim zomimim. V'amar Rav. Now Rav is going to say something similar, but there's one thing that's different. The Gemara is going to say, isn't this the same idea? Haroveh et treifa chayav. If somebody sodomizes a person who is going to die anyway, they're still responsible. We're going to get back to this and explain soon. I mean, theoretically, it shouldn't make a difference anyway, right? What person you sodomized. Although we'll see, right? Because if you murder a person who's a treifa, you don't get the death penalty. So there's the big difference here. But let's just continue. Treifa sherava. What if the perpetrator was a treifa? He initiated the sodomy. Bifnei beitin chayav, shelo bifnei beitin patur. Here we get the exact same distinction as before. Bifnei beitin chayav, why in front of the court? Dechtiv ubiarta hara mikirbecha, because you have to uproot evil. Shelo bifnei beitin patur, dahavi le'edut she'i ata yachola zima. Again, if the treifa is the one who's going to be convicted, the edim zomimim, we're going to try to get them killed, and they can't get them killed because they're not edim that you can, right? Because they were trying to kill a dead person by lying. Okay, he was anyway like a dead man. Okay, so now the Gemara says hatu lamali hayuhach. That's exactly as what we just said in the previous. Why do we need to say it again? Why did Rabbi need to tell us both? Haruveata treifa it's treifa, because he needed the first line. In other words, the second line was just a continuation of the first. But he needed to teach us that for tzalacha, haruveata treifa chayav. Why? Mao detema lehavi kimanda mishamish mate v'lipater. Now, if one engages in sexual relations with a dead body, okay, necrophilia they call it, they're not liable because the person was dead, okay? But you might say a treifa is like a dead person. So theoretically, maybe you're exempt if you sodomize a dead person. And they're telling you, no, you're not, okay? So you might have thought it's like, it's like someone who has relations with a dead person and would be exempt. Kamash malan de mishum hana'ahu. No, but the real issue here in the sodomy is you gain pleasure from this because the person was physically alive, even if they had a title of dead person on their head. Ha'itle hana'ah. There was pleasure here in the act, which wouldn't be if it was a dead body. So, I mean, obviously there must be some sort of pleasure is why people do it. I have no idea, but that's not, we're not going there right now. The Amarav, another halacha. And here we're going to take it even another step farther. Edim shehi idu b'treifa v'hu zamu. Let's say witnesses testified about a treifa, and then they became edim zomimim, right? Meaning they turned out they were lying. They were trying to kill this treifa. Ein neharagim. That we already know. They don't get the death penalty. That's the whole point. That's why they shouldn't really be testifying about him in the first place. It's not testimony that's accepted anyway, but they wouldn't get the death penalty. But what if, now, okay, we started with the person who did it. Now we're going to go, what if the Eidei treifa shehuzmu? What if the Eidim are treifas? Okay, and they're testifying about a person who was a regular person who did it. Neharagim. Well, those Eidim would be killed. Okay? Now, Rav Ashi Amar, he disagrees. He says, what do you mean? Afilu Eidei treifa shehuzmu ein neharagim. This is the ein ledavar sof, as we say. There is no end to this because every witness testimony has to be testimony that can be overridden by another witness that turned them into edim zomimim. So even eidei treifa shehuzmu ein neharagim, right? Even eidei treifa that become edim zomimim don't get killed. Lefi she'einam bezomimei zomimim, because, right, again, we have witnesses who maybe potentially lie about this person, so they can't get the punishment because he was anyway a dead person. Now we have the witnesses who testify about them, right? In other words, then there could be witnesses that knock out the Eidim Zomim. They say, we were with you on that date. And then these other witnesses, what do you mean? We were with the witnesses, right? You witnesses on this date. And you couldn't have testified and said that those witnesses are lying. So we have, right? So therefore, the witnesses, even Eidei treifa that becomes Zomimim, don't get killed because, again, the Zomimim, there is no such thing, right? No one can knock them out because they're treifas. So Rav Ashi basically says we take this even farther. The Amar Rava, and Rava says, short treifa shaharag chayav. Now we're going into a different area with treifas. Okay, we got all off on this treifa thing because we started with the 10 people. From the 10 people, we got to distinguishing, well, there's treifa, which everyone agrees. There's goses b'dei shemayim, which everyone disagrees. And this is in between, which is it more similar, this gang killing. From there, we got on to all these halachot about treifas. And now we're going to end the section with an ox that's a treifa that kills a person. Now, if you remember, if an ox kills a person, the Torah says, we learned this in Bava Kama, the shor yisakel, okay, the shor gets stoned. The gamba alav yumat. This is if it's a shor mu'ad, and the shor was known to have done this a few times, and the shor kills. The shor gets stoned, and the owner also gets killed. Now, we don't do that because the next pasuk says, well, if you pay a ransom payment, you could pay your way out of this death because in the end, you didn't do it directly. So you should theoretically get killed, but you can pay a ransom to get out of it. So now the question is, what if the shor is a treifa? And it's especially interesting in this pasuk that it says the owner should be killed when, in the next pasuk it says, well, the owner doesn't really need to be killed. So they're going to learn a lot about the juxtaposition between the shor getting killed and the owner getting killed. So that's where we're going to go in a few different directions here. V'amar Rava, shor treifa shaharag chayav, v'shor shaladam treifa shaharag patur. If the shor is a treifa and the shor kills, the shor will be liable. But the shor of an adam treifa shaharag, if the owner is a treifa, patur, then the shor doesn't get stoned. Why? Why would that matter? My time, Amar Kra. Hashur yisakel v'gam ba'alav yumat, because the pasuk says the shore gets stoned and the owner gets killed. So it would have to be kol hecha dekrina be v'gam ba'alav yumat, krina be hashur yisakel. If the owner is a treifa and can't get killed, then the shore can't get stoned, very simply. But kol hecha de lo krina be v'gam ba'alav yumat, lo krina be hashur yisakel. Okay, and if we don't say gam ba'alav yumat, like in our case, if the owner doesn't get killed, then lo krina be'ashur yisakel. So it has to be a case where the owner, if the owner had done it, the owner would get killed, then the shore will get stoned. So as soon as the owner's a treifa, it's no good. But if the shore is a treifa, well, that has nothing to do with the owner, so the shore will get stoned. Rav Ashi, though, comes and disagrees, as he disagrees with Rav in many of the cases we saw today. Afilu shor treifa nami shaharag patur. Even a short treifa that killed is exempt. My timer. He takes it, though, farther. He says, no. Take that comparison all the way. A shore who's a treifa, since in the parallel case, if the owner was a treifa, the owner wouldn't get killed, then a shore being a treifa also doesn't get killed. Okay, that's the machlok. We're finished with all the treifa cases. Now we're moving on to Shisabu Atakelev, which is a quote from the Mishnah, Ayin Vav Amubet, but really, what does interest us is not Shisabu Atakelev and Anachash, which everyone agrees is Patur, but we're going to finally understand that case of the Mishnah, which we didn't really understand. Machloka, Rabbi Yehuda and the rabbis about Hishich Bo Atanachash. I stick a nachash right up to you to bite you, and then you die. One opinion, you're liable. One opinion, you're exempt. So why is that? Let's read. Amar Rab Acha bar Yaakov, Kishetimtza lomar ledivrei Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, the way we understand Rabbi Yehuda, who says that you're liable, is that Eres Nachash ben Shinav Omed. We seem to have a disagreement about how the venom in the snake works. According to Rabbi Yehuda, the venom in the snake is in its mouth. So if I stick the snake right up to you and the snake bites you, well, the snake didn't really do it. I did it because the venom is right there. So I'm sticking the venom basically on you and I'm responsible. And therefore, lefichach makish b'sayif, I would get my head cut off. V'nachash patur, but the snake, nothing happens to the snake. And that's why the snake? Well, it's like the shore. We just said if a shore kills a person, the shore gets stoned. The snake would have to get stoned, but no, it doesn't in this case because it's not the snake's fault. But the divrei chachamim, according to the rabbis who said patur, why is that? Well, eres nachash me'atzmo maki. The snake decides to take out its venom when it wants. Lefichach nachash b'skila and makish patur. So just because I put the snake there, it's the snake who decided again. Understand what that means? Decided, but the snake did the action to get the venom out, and therefore it wasn't me. It was the snake, and it was me, but it was indirect damages that we call grama. Because that's grama, I'm not liable, and the snake would actually be the one liable. It's not like nobody's liable, but the snake would get stoned. Okay, new Mishnah. Hamaket chavero bein be'even bein be'egrof ve'amduhu lemita. This is going to be our main topic for the next section. Somebody hits another with his fist or with a stone, and they assess the person was going to die. However, hey, kill me, mashaya, but all of a sudden the person doesn't die. But then they eventually die. Okay, this happens, unfortunately, with soldiers a lot, right? They get injured, they get better, there's improvement. Maybe they thought at first the person was going to die, then all of a sudden the situation improves, and sometimes, thankfully, they live and everything's great. And sometimes then all of a sudden the situation deteriorates, right? We always hear on the news, like after a long time, someone now had died from their wounds, right? They succumbed to their wounds. So some of them were always in a state of, close to death. And some of them actually get better and then unfortunately get worse. So, chayav. In this case, Tanakama says, the person who originally hit the person is liable, which makes a lot of sense. Rabbi Nechamia omer patur, sheraglayim ledavar. Rabbi Nechamia says, what do you mean? You're exempt because the person already got better. So the fact that they eventually died could be from something else, or at least it's already indirect at that point. That's a very big basic machloket here. Tana Rabbanan, and we're going to deal with this machloket until we get to the next Mishnah, really. Tana Rabbanan. Etzo darash Rabbi Nechamia. This is the way he darshan the pasuk. Okay, and we're going to have two ways to darshan this pasuk. Im yakum vitalech bachutz. Okay, we're in a pasuk Shmot kaf aleph pasuk yud tet. If the person, so here someone hits a person, if they get up, vitalech bachutz, and they start walking outside al mishanto, on their staff, vinika makeh, and they get better. Now there's a little redundancy in this pasuk. Nikamaka means, right, the wound healed, but they already got up and started walking. Obviously, the wound healed. So that's what we're going to darshan here. Rak shivto yitev rapo yerapeh. Then you have to start paying damages according to that. Okay, that's what the pasuk says. I just read the whole pasuk. We're now on Amud Bet. It sounds like the pasuk is telling you, right? If you got better, the person got better, then you don't get killed. This is a different problem with the pasuk than the one I mentioned before, which is obviously if you got better, you don't get if the person I hit got better, even though we thought they were going to die originally, they got better. Of course, I don't get punished. Why would I get punished? The person's walking on the street. So, in other words, forget that. Right? So they're saying, let's take a classic case. Person we thought they were going to die, and then they got better. So that's what it sounds like the pasuk is talking about. And the pasuk says you pay and you don't get the death penalty. So the Gemara says, right? Why would you think I would get killed? I didn't kill them. Even if we thought that maybe it was going to cause their death, in the end, I didn't kill them. So of course I can't get the death penalty if the person's alive. And therefore that can't be the simple reading of the pasuk because it's simply too obvious. Ella, it must be telling you more than what the pasuk says. Must be coming to tell you, says Rabbi Nechamia, it's telling you about the case in our Mishnah. That we thought the person was going to die, they got up, they got better, and then they died. Even though it doesn't say so in the pasuk, you're exempt from the death penalty, and you only have to pay for damages. We'll get later to what damages do you pay. The Rabbanan, hi v'nikah makeh my darshebe, right? And now we have to say, and that all really comes out of this v'nikah makah, right? Nikah makah, according to this, means it got better and then they died. So what do the rabbis do with it? You don't really need those words; they're extra. That's what I said before. Milamed shechofshinoto. What would the rabbis learn from this? That if I hit someone, they were now in the hospital. We think they're going to die, but they didn't yet die. So they're not going to kill me yet. But what are they going to do with me in the meantime? They think the person's going to die. So they put me in jail until we figure out what's happening, what the status of the person is. That's what he learns from that pasuk. The v'nikah makah means, right, and then you can get out of jail. In other words, until then, you must have been in jail. For Rabbi Nechamia, Chavisham Menale. Now, if Rabbi Nechamia doesn't learn that from the pasuk, because he needs the pasuk to teach us that extra case when the person actually died again, right? Where the situation, death, then we said, oh, they got better, but then they died. You're exempt. Well, where does he learn the fact that you're going to have to go to jail in the meantime, which we assume everybody agrees with, right? Until we find out whether the person's going to live or not after the initial assessment. Yalef mi mikoshesh. Oh, he'll learn it from the mikoshesh. In the Torah, what happened? There was the mikoshesh. He was chopping trees on Shabbat. We knew it was forbidden what he did, but we didn't know what to do with him. So Moshe, right, didn't know what the punishment, so he puts him in jail. So now they say, and what do you see? When you don't know what to do, you put someone in jail. So the rabbis, now we're back. We're doing the ping pong. For Rabbanan, so if the rabbis learn jail from there, why didn't the rabbis learn jail from the Mikoshesh case? And then if they learn it from the Mikoshesh, then we're back to saying, what do they do with Mikah Makah in our pasuk? Rabbanan, nami le'alfei mi Mikoshesh. Why don't the rabbis learn from the Mikoshesh? To which they answer, Mikoshesh bar katlahu. No. The Mikoshesh, they knew the Mikoshesh was supposed to get the death penalty, as opposed to our person where we don't know, because we don't know yet if the person's going to live or die. Umoshe lo avayada kale b'mai, just didn't know which death penalty. We'll see in a minute, or 2 minutes, where Moshe knew this from. But we're assuming Moshe knew from the Torah that anyone who was Mechalel Shabbat, it actually came before, it's pretty obvious. Anyone who desecrates Shabbat dies. He just didn't know which death penalty. But you can't learn from there to our case where we don't know if the person liable to death penalty or not because we're waiting to see if the patient dies. So you wouldn't learn jail from there in that case, right? In other words, you wouldn't learn to our case. For Rabbi Nechamia, who does learn it from the Mikoshesh, now we're stuck. How could he learn from the Mikoshesh? It's really not the same thing. So fine. Rabbi Nechamia can't learn it from the Mikoshesh. We're going to find a different situation where he learns it from. Yalaf mi migadef. There was also someone in the desert who cursed God. And there, Moshe really didn't know whether there was punishment at all, or whether there was a death penalty at all. And they put him in jail. So that could be where Rabbi Nechamia learns it from. Now the rabbis learn it from our pasuk in Yikam Akan. That was a unique situation because why was it unique? Well, because they didn't know what the law was yet. Once they got the law, then they knew. Like that was a one-time situation. It wouldn't happen again once Moshe got the law. And by the way, you could answer this to the original question about the Mikoshesh as well. So that's how the rabbis answer it. And now, how do we know this distinction that we just made between the Mikoshesh and the Megadev, that they were each in jail for a different reason? One, because we didn't know which death penalty, and the other, because we didn't even know, is it death penalty or not? As it says in a Braita, Yodeh haya Moshe Rabbeinu shemakoshesh b'mita. Moshe knew that the Mikoshesh is supposed to get the death penalty. Shene'amar, because it says in the Pasuk, Shmot Lamed Aleph, right, V'shmartem et HaShabbat, etc., mechalaleha mot yumat. Ela lo haya yodea be'ezo mita neherag. He just didn't know which death penalty. Shene'amar ki lo porash. It says there, ki lo porash ma'yaselo. It wasn't explained yet what to do to a person like this. And there we see the distinction. Right? Aval Megadef, lo ne'amar bo ela. Sorry, I read this wrong. Lo yada be'eza mita, that's the Mikoshesh. Shene'amar ki lo porash. It wasn't explained yet which death penalty. Aval Megadef, lo ne'amar bo ela lifrosh lahem al pi Hashem. There it says they put him in jail to hear from the mouth of God. That's like much more general than they didn't know what to do. What to do is like which death penalty. But here they didn't know at all anything about it. Moshe just didn't know, is this death penalty, is it not? Now we're going to continue with some issues about them in the Psukim. Bishlam ala Rabbi Nechamia. Hainu dichtive trei umdene. The pasuk has two umdenot, meaning, right, again, it says he got up and started walking, and then it says vinika makah, right, and the makah, the wound was healed. So why do you need both? So according to Rabbi Nechamia, this works perfectly. Chad amduhu limita v'chaya. One is to tell you, if you thought the person was going to die, but then they ended up being healthy, then again, here's the payment. You have to pay instead of death penalty. V'chad amduhu limita v'kel mima shahaya. And the second is, when you thought they were going to die, they got better, but then they eventually died. Again, you're not going to get the death penalty. That's Rabbi Nechemia's position. But according to the rabbis, why do we have two? What are we learning for both? Because remember, if the situation changed from death to not death, better, and then to death, the rabbis are going to obligate you, and that can't be what the pasuk is talking about. So one is the basic case. You thought the person was going to die, the simple reading, and then they got better, you're going to pay. Another case where you're going to be exempt. If originally I hit a person and they assessed that the person wasn't going to die, and then the person actually dies, I'm exempt. Because they assumed, right, they assessed, and it could be the person died for some other health issue they had or something else. Right? We go by the original assessment and I actually don't get killed, and that would be the second case that the pasuk is talking about. Rabbi Nechamia, what's he going to say? Why doesn't Rabbi Nechamia learn that from the pasuk? Where is he going to learn that from? I don't need a pasuk for that. Shareya Tami Beitin Zakai. Because at that moment when they assess, I didn't kill the person, I'm already exempt. Once someone's exempt, we don't obligate anymore. We've learned that before, right? Once they walk out of court exempt, or in this case, they didn't walk out of court, but it was as if they could have walked out of court exempt, we don't obligate them. Tanu Rabbanan, a new Braita. Again, connected with these opinions. Okay, if someone hits someone and they assess they're going to die and then they live again, putrimoto. This is Rabbi Nechamia, obviously. Amduhu limita, they kill me mashaya. If they thought he was going to die and then he got better. Omdimoto omed sheni lemamon. When he gets better, they assess now how much damage is it, right? First they thought it was death, then they reassess and they say, okay, how much damage now? Ve'im la'achar ken hichbib v'met, halach achar omed emtzai divrei Rabbi Nechamia. If after the person got worse and died, then remember, Rabbi Nechamia doesn't obligate you the death penalty. You have to pay. So what do you pay based on? The original assessment or the second assessment, right? When the person got better. So they say, according to Rabbi Nechamia, we go by the middle assessment, meaning the one we did when the person got better. The Chachamim mubrim ein omed achar omed. The rabbis say there's no such thing as omed achar omed. In other words, if this would happen, you wouldn't, let's say there was a case, because the rabbis actually think you're supposed to get the death penalty, but if for some reason you couldn't get the death penalty and you did pay, then you would pay by the original, the evaluation at the beginning of how much damage that they thought you caused in their, when you thought they were going to die, that's how you'd have to pay. Tanya Idach, here's a different Braita. Amduhu limita, umdimoto l'chayim. Okay, if originally they assessed the person would be dead, but then they get better, then umdimoto l'chayim. You can assess them at that point, how much they're worth, right, and how much damage is done. But l'chayim ein umdimoto l'mita. But if the person first you thought the person was going to live, and then it turns out they died, we don't do a reassessment of what they're, of the death. Okay. I just want to check one thing. Right. This is just if you assess the person l'chaim. This is based on what we said before. Once yatzas zakai, we don't reassess and say, "Oh, you killed the person." This is all Rabbi Nechamia. Okay, we're going to get to that soon. It's obvious though. Amduhu limita ve'kelmi mashaya. If you assess the person was going to die and then the situation gets better, omdimoto omed sheni lemamon. Okay, you do a new evaluation and then they pay damages. But if they eventually die, then you have to pay the damages to the heirs. In this case, though, they say mishashi kau. The person were to die, this is different than what we said before. We go back to the original of what the assessment for damages were when we thought they were going to die, and you pay damages based on what they were worth at the moment. They weren't dead yet. So what they were worth at that moment when you thought they were going to die, what their value was, and that's the amount of damages you pay. Ustamaka Rabbi Nechamia. And this obviously goes like Rabbi Nechamia because the rabbis would say if you died eventually, the person would actually get the death penalty. So there we saw a lot of different ways that different psukim, how does this work according to them, that work according to them. And then we saw Braitot that explain, I would say expand on it and give more details about how we do the payment. Because originally we were just trying, do they get death penalty or not? But then what about the payment when there is payment? Now we're going to end with this last Mishnah. Okay, here it's all about intent. If you intended to kill an animal and it turns out you saw something far away, you were hunting, you thought it was an animal, it turns out it was a person and you killed the person. You were shooting at a non-Jew, you thought, turns out it was a Jew. Now, if you kill a Jew, you're not liable to the death penalty. Non-Jew, you're not liable to the death penalty. If you kill an animal, you're not liable to the death penalty. If it was a baby that wasn't a viable baby, they were going to die. You thought it was, and then you killed a ben kayama, you killed a baby who it was going to live, you're exempt. In a minute, I'll talk about why, or maybe we'll stop now and I'll talk about why. What's the issue here? So interesting machloket. Rashi says the issue is because there's what we call safek hatra. Okay, you need to be warned before you do something. Let's say there's an animal far away. I'm about to shoot the animal, and someone comes to me and says, "Listen, do you know it's possible that's a person, and if you kill that person, you'll be liable to the death penalty." This is what we call a hatra'at safek. It's a warning given under doubt. It's not clear. It's a person. So I could say, yeah, I don't care. I'm going to do it anyway. But it's because I really didn't think it was a person. So you can't blame me for that's not a clear warning. A warning has to be, do you know that's a person and you kill that person, you're going to be liable. So that's Rashi. The Yav Ramah doesn't like this. The Ramah says in the commentary Yav Ramah, no, that can't be the issue. So the issue is that you need to be mezid. It says, ki yazid ish are'eu. Barago, right? That's what the pasuk says, or get the words exactly. But ki yazira re'eu, you do it intentionally. This is not intentional. You didn't intend. You need full intent, not intention to do something else. Even if you intended the action of killing, it's not enough because you didn't intend to kill someone you were liable to the death penalty for. Okay. Also, nitkaven lakotol monav. You want to hit them on the hips. And if you were to hit on the hips with that kind of strength, the person wouldn't die. But by accident, it went to their heart. But that kind of a blow on the heart could kill a person. And the person dies because you hit him on the heart, a serious injury. Patur, you're exempt because again, you didn't intend to hit him on the heart. You did intend to hit that heart, but hitting that heart on the hips would not have caused the same problem as hitting on the heart, and therefore you're exempt. We'll get to more cases of this tomorrow. It's a long Mishnah. And with that, we finished for today. So we started with the whole issue of the gang, and from there we got into the treifa cases, and all off on this tangent of machlokot between Rav and Rav Ashi about different treifa cases, about witnesses that are treifas, about all that, about the perpetrators who are treifas. And then we got to the nachash and the two different approaches about the snake and how their venom works. And then we got to the whole thing about an assessment. We thought someone was died, then they got better, but then they died. Machloket, Rabbi Nechamia, and the rabbis, and we went through all different psukim and issues that are deliberations between them relating to this, and ended with our topic of kavana and intent to kill, how important that is in terms of, again, limiting the pool of who's actually going to get the death penalty. with that, we finish for today. Wishing everyone a good day.